Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's meeting for the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, where every week we bring you an inspirational and thought-provoking program that's focused on education, entrepreneurship, and innovation. And this week, well, actually, my name is Cviatko, and I'm a director with this club. I'm going to be your host for this week, and we have a treat for you because our speaker comes all the way from Zimbabwe. Gwata leads Muzinda Hub, which is a technology hub in Harare, in the capital of Zimbabwe. I met Vim a bit more than a year ago, I think. And I'll let her go into more of an introduction and tell her about the exciting work that she has been involved with. Vim, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Good day to you, even though it's evening for me over here. Thank you, Z, for that introduction. Just to tell you a little bit more about myself, as Z mentioned, my name is Vimbai Gwata. I'm the operations manager for Muzinda Hub. Muzinda Hub is a technology hub based in Zim. We are a subsidiary of Econet Wireless, which is Zimbabwe's biggest telecom. Our focus at the moment is to provide globally competitive digital skills training to young Zimbabweans. Currently, that's in the form of providing developer skills to entry-level developer skills, let me specify. So anyone looking to learn how to code in PHP, in WordPress, in Android, in iOS, can come through to us. We do our training online. It's a 5-month training period that we've created, which is more a guided program. So what happens then is we have 2 intakes per year, mostly about 250. Looking at 2018, we can see that those numbers are growing. So the interest and passion for people wanting to code is growing. So we have quite a few people who come through for 5 months. In that, we provide them with online training facilities that we have with one of our US-based partners, Treehouse. We also have an entrepreneurship and business skills training section that we have from one of our South African-based partners called Ubuntu. And then just to bring it all together, we have a group development project where the guys get into teams and create the website or app of their choice. At Muzinda Hub, over and above the training that I just described, we also provide consulting services. So we select from the best and brightest of our alumni who come through on our program to help us and assist us with client work, which they get remunerated for accordingly. And then we also have a third contingent, which is placement of our alumni. We're always trying to seek placement opportunities. What you might not know about Zimbabwe, I'm not sure what you hear in the press. I'm pretty sure it's not good, but our unemployment rate is extremely high. It's sitting at 95%. That means that most school leavers or university leavers are coming out into a market that cannot absorb them. So one of the things that our founder of Econet, our telecoms company, the opportunity that he saw back in 2014 when Muzinda Hub was established was there must be a way to upskill young Zimbabweans and as well as address the youth unemployment rate. So he looked at digital skills training as one of those ways, helping them not only learn a skill that is needed worldwide, but also a skill that they can then take and use to possibly in an entrepreneurial way to create their own apps, to create, their own businesses. That's for the more motivated amongst the bunch. A lot of the people that we have coming through our program are also working professionals just looking to upskill themselves. And yeah, that's to sum it all up, that's what we do at Muzinda Hub.
That's awesome. Thanks, Vim. This is really, really interesting to hear. I had a couple of questions for you. So you did mention that some of the graduates with would start their own businesses, so that focus on entrepreneurship. But what would you say the majority of the graduates of your training program end up doing?
That's interesting you just said that, because we've just done a survey. Every year around this time, we try and do a survey to find out where our alumni have ended up. Obviously, with a lot of the brain drain situation that happens in Zimbabwe, a lot of our grads actually do end up in South Africa. But what we've found out is about 50% of them do end up in full-time employment, of which about 25% of that is actually tech-related. But when it comes to kind of app development and just taking the skill that they've learned to create something new, you're looking at about 20% of our alumni doing that, whether it's within Zimbabwe or outside the borders.
Okay, that's really cool. So, how do you keep more of those graduates in Zimbabwe? Like, what do you think needs to be done? Is there plans maybe for more focused on the entrepreneurship side of things, or more placement within the Zimbabwe borders of those graduates?
I think the bottom line is just the need for opportunity. So at the moment, I would say Zimbabwe is the kind of place, there's a very certain kind of person who thrives in these current conditions. That's a person who sees opportunity despite what's happening. If you're the kind of person who's kind of sitting back and hoping to find something, it's going to be a little more difficult. So you'll find that everyone, including myself, in this kind of environment, even though you have a 9-to-5, has an entrepreneurial mindset. Everyone's trying to find alternative forms of income, So what we find is that most people will probably try and secure, whether it's full-time or part-time employment, but most people will still kind of try and create something on the side. What I really think to improve, especially around kind of the tech aspect of innovation and entrepreneurship, is that more support is needed to support kind of upcoming startups. There are hubs out there that do along the lines of incubation hubs and accelerator hubs, but it's almost impossible to get in. If you think about like 100 people who've got an idea that they want to see possibly taken to fruition, and a lot of these hubs from a selection criteria are taking about 5 people at a time. One of the natural conclusions, we've had this conversation before, as you know, one of the natural kind of offshoots forms in the hub is an incubation and acceleration kind of vibe, especially from our alumni who go on to create really innovative and interesting solutions. I mean, I'm thinking about the one participant that we had, and he realized in his area, a township, which is basically a very high density area to live. He noticed that the vendors who kind of sell sweets and, chips and crisps and things like that on the side of the road, they were unable to kind of stock their wares with the wholesalers, because the wholesalers were like, no, you have to buy in extreme bulk. So he created an app which had everyone in the area say what they want to create that kind of bulk and then place the order. So it's really interesting things like that. So for 2018, one of our main mandates at Zinda Hub is to kind of see how we can facilitate that incubation and acceleration model to support people who want to take it to the next level coming through our programs. As I mentioned before, some people are just looking to upskill. Some people are like, oh, coding. Everyone keeps talking about this online. Let me just see what this is about, And then there's some very serious people who are like, I've got an idea, I've got a passion, and I'm here to see if I can just, do the development thing. But this is just like this is the third step on the road to where they're going. One of the things that we've also realized is that around the support areas, government has to get involved. And that's something we're not seeing at the moment. Even though everyone will still kind of talk lip service about tech, it's great, coding, we just need a lot of support from government in terms of whether it's monetary or grants or anything like that, to just kind of help these kind of startups coming through. We know the success rate of startups. It's bleak everywhere. No one has figured out the algorithm of how to make like a startup 100% surefire. But what we're trying to do here is create, hubs that will kind of guarantee that successful, at least 50% of it. One of the other things that we're really trying to address within the hub is when people come through and are learning how to code and come up with ideas for projects and future startups, it always seems to fall within the same realm, which is a very obvious realm. They're looking at, I don't know, hotel booking systems or ordering food apps. And you wouldn't think it in Zimbabwe, but there's a lot of food apps ordering systems. So one of the big things that I have been pushing for is, how do we expose basically school leavers who've probably lived all their lives in, whether it's Harare or smaller towns in Zimbabwe, how do we expose those people to the potential of what technology could take us to? So for example, obviously we're in Africa, which means we have a lot of wildlife. But what people don't know is that there's a lot of kind of grants that are coming through for technology to assist in wildlife conservation, whether it's tracking rhinos with drones or making sure they're not being poached. There are many kind of facilities that are like taking technology in a different way. But one of my questions has been, because a lot of the guys I'm dealing with are coming from lower to middle income backgrounds. One of my things is that, a lot of it starts with exposure, letting them know the expanse of possibilities. The more exposure you give people, the better the ideas you get. So that's one of the things that we're just trying to improve upon.
Very cool. Wow, thank you for that. I appreciate you sharing that story of the gentleman from the high density area who saw the opportunity to help the people selling food. It's really cool when when you talk to people from other countries that would never come up with those types of ideas because they're unfamiliar with the challenges that people there face. But thanks so much for sharing that story. Now, can you tell us a bit about the cost of that program? So you said they go through several month program where they learn coding, whether it's Python or how to make apps for iOS or whatever else. Does the cost vary depending on which route they choose? Do you have certain programs that are more popular than others? Tell us a bit more about that.
Okay, so let me take you back. As I mentioned earlier, we were established in 2014. So in 2014 and 2015, the model that we had for training at that time was that the program was actually free. So we had 1,000 people sign up. But what we found was free also comes with a little bit of a cost in itself. Of those 1,000 people, a lot of them just dropped out. Like, people just didn't take it seriously. If it's something free, there was just no feeling of, I don't know, they just didn't take it seriously. Another thing we also realized is that if we were going to become a sustainable business, we're going to have to figure out a sustainable way to survive. So one of the things we did, like I mentioned before, the program is $120 over 5 months. So initially, one of the $120, it depends on who you speak to. Some people would say only, just because when you think about tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe that offer computer science and even IT training, they don't have this level of expertise. If you know anything about Treehouse, which is Silicon Valley based organization, you'll know that most of their tutorials are video tutorials with really expert online trainers. So what we find is, even though people come to us and they've graduated in comp sci or they've graduated in information systems. They're still like, we never coded. We were there for 4 years, but we have no hands-on. So they still come to us for these kind of things. So we have this, and it's 120 for the entire 5 months, which is, like I told you, that 3-part kind of breakdown. And we found that we were quite scared about that price point, even though it's quite, from what is being offered in the market at the moment on our end, is quite a low price point. But we've seen a very increased interest in this program. So for example, right now, I am taking applications for the first intake of 2018, which will run from February until June. And I've literally only had applications open from the Monday, the 16th of October. And I'm looking at 150 applications as of close of today. And that's 2 weeks. And when I first came on board, which was about this time last year, you know, our biggest thing was, will anyone actually apply? And now it's kind of crazy because I'm like telling my training coordinator, you better be like sifting through these applications because they're coming in, because the applications are open until mid-January. And I'm already like, whoo. But we have to also be cognizant about where we are, which is we're in Zimbabwe, where liquidity is at an all-time low. We might be the world's very first cashless society. There's no cash. I'm walking around with $2 in my bag, but that's because all my banking and all my transactions currently, even though there's money in the bank, are all being done via mobile money or mobile banking. So one of the things is people saying, oh, maybe I don't have enough money. We compete with things here. Training is seen as a luxury. That's one of the challenges we possibly have. So for example, if I'm recruiting for February until June, I'm recruiting over the Christmas period, going into the new year. For Zimbabwe, the school year starts in January. I think your school year starts back in September. So I'm competing with people coming from Christmas, spending money over New Year's, having to pay whatever they have to pay for school fees, for family members, for their own family. So it's just like whatever's left over. But through our marketing efforts, which we've been doing through Facebook, Twitter, as well as traditional newspaper campaigns, we've seen a growth in people just realizing the demand of it. We've had, so far, the youngest person we've had on our program has been 10 years old, and the oldest person we've had on our program has been 65, you know? We get a lot of people saying, is there an age limit? You're like, no, there's no age limit. But obviously the bulk of people who come on our program are sitting between the 20 and 35 age group. But it's just really interesting. We have a lot of mothers approaching us with children in primary and secondary school, asking us to start, you know, training programs for minors pretty much. As well as we've had elderly people who say, you know, we need it a little bit slower. So can someone come and give us more one-on-one training? A lot of as I mentioned before, the majority of the program itself is done online. So even though the base of my hub, as Z said earlier, is sitting in Harare, we have people from across the country. And I'm telling you, like remotely across the country, which says wonders about our kind of coverage of bandwidth. Because a lot of people, one of the challenges they possibly ask us is, you know, do people have access to internet? Do people have all the facilities? And I'm like, yes, they do. A lot of Zimbabweans have smartphones. A lot of Zimbabweans have access to these things. If I could just mention the most remote places and somebody's saying, well, there are 4 of us doing a project here. And you're like, really? So it's just really interesting, kind of trying to decentralize this training philosophy, because most of these opportunities would be seen to be like capital city specific, whereas we're trying to say, no, it's not. As long as, you know, you can get yourself online and get some data, which is obviously where my parent company comes into play with wonderful efforts they've done with coverage across the country. So that's exactly, yeah, that's it.
Nice. Well, yeah, that's it's really cool, the nature of the program, how, like you were saying, it allows people in very remote areas to still participate and take full advantage of it. Cool. Hey, so you mentioned a couple of times the different challenges in Zimbabwe. So the lack of cash, the crazy high unemployment rate. Can you maybe speak a bit more about that for those watching our program who are unfamiliar with Zimbabwe?
Okay.
I know this could probably take like
oh God,
forever.
I was like, where do we start? Where do we start? Lord help us.
But maybe just
Okay.
very base level, introduction, and maybe specifically focus on, the unemployment rate. You said 95%, is it?
95%. Yeah.
95%. So what does that mean exactly? Are, only 5% of the population employed? Obviously there must be other source of income, maybe that's, for those entrepreneurs who are, selling different types of things on the street, even the food vendors that you mentioned earlier. Like, what goes into that 95%?
Well, that 95% number has been quite greatly debated. It depends on who's giving you that statistic. That statistic came through from the National Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, NGOs, within Zimbabwe. And that number, 95%, is from a study that they did back in 2011. So if that was 2011, which is exactly 6 years ago, I don't know where that number is sitting at the moment. Then there's a lot of debate around what is considered unemployment. Is informal sector, as you will know, informal sector is basically what I just described with somebody selling crisps on the side of the road. If they're not including those kind of people, because that's a form of employment in itself, that's probably why that number is very high. Zimbabwe's gone through a few tough, I think it's most of my existence, 2/3 of it at least. And just one of the issues around it is the lack of industry. So things that we used to rely on quite substantially, predominantly looking at agriculture, looking at maybe the manufacturing industry, those things have ground to quite a bit of a halt. Once again, it depends on who you ask to say what the issue is. Some people could say we don't have foreign investment, but there's just a lot that's gone wrong over a long period of time. That is my most diplomatic answer to that.
Thank you.
Yes, that's almost. Please just Google it. You can figure it out yourself. But having said that, one of the reasons I'm very passionate about the work we do at Mazinda Hub is because even though things are not perfect, we can't be left behind. I'm always saying, I'm the forever optimist. I'm always saying we're looking for that scenario that if things do turn around, you want to be on top of it. You want to say, we do have a skilled population, a digitally savvy population. One of the many opportunities that has come out of this crisis, as I mentioned to you, is that Zimbabwe is at the forefront of the cashless society, the mobile money. The way we use money here is unlike anywhere I've ever seen. So I guess there's an upside to all of this. And also it makes for very interesting kind of app development, trying to address these kind of huge gaps that we have. But ultimately, what our founder, Mr. Strive Masiwa, was trying to do when he founded Mazinda Hub, he was just trying to say, there must be a way. We can't sit and twiddle our thumbs and hope for change. There must be a way to incite that kind of change ourselves, to at least have people create their own opportunities. And that's one of the things that we're going for.
Yeah, and congratulations on your commitment to this, and being part of the solution, and really empowering young Zimbabweans with the knowledge and the skills that they need to be successful and to contribute to their country's economic progress. So Vim, before we wrap up, why don't you tell us a little bit about Zimbabwe Guata? Tell us about yourself. What is your background? Where did you go to school? So you're obviously from Zimbabwe. Were you born and raised there? Did you spend your entire life there? Tell us a bit more about yourself.
My hopes, my dreams, my aspirations. Okay, I was born and raised here. I went to, I did most of my formative learning here, which is primary and secondary school. I then went to South Africa to do my university degree. I was at the University of Cape Town. For those of you who've never been to Cape Town, you must make a plan. It's really beautiful. As well as Zimbabwe, you must also make a plan. Very beautiful. And there I did my honors degree in information systems. So, without giving away my age, we were doing things like programming in VB.net. But it's very interesting to see the same challenges there as I do now in Muzinda Hub in terms of the composition of classes. So for example, in Cape Town, I was in an honors class of about 78 individuals, of which 17 were only women, of which 4 of us were only people of color, which is crazy because I was in South Africa, you know. And when I think about, especially around kind of the female-male kind of ratio, that's exactly what I see still playing out when I look at the composition of Muzinda Hub. So one of the big things is trying to encourage women into tech and just tell them it's not a male-dominated field. But my background is within the professional services. So I used to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers and KPMG in Zimbabwe and in South Africa. And I did a lot around IT consulting and the very not sexy work of IT auditing. I then took a gamble back in 2012 to say that, you know, there must be something other than the corporate rat race. And I actually joined a non-profit within South Africa that did a lot of work within youth development services. I then moved back home in 2015. And this opportunity around Muzinda presented itself around 2016. And it kind of married both of my interests, which is tech and kind of youth development. I mean, it worked out perfectly because a lot of people were looking at my employment record with very big questions in their minds. But it's become like the perfect synergy for kind of the work that we're doing here. And obviously, because I'm from here, I'm a very true Hararian Zimbabwean girl. I'm very passionate about this work and very passionate about uplifting youth empowerment and youth development, especially in the area of tech. So that's me.
Wow, very cool, very impressive. It's so cool to hear stories about people like yourselves who are so well-rounded and, you know, educated at home and abroad, then looking for opportunities to come back home and contribute. So way to go, Vim. All right, so I'm gonna wrap things up over here, and I'll give you, I'll give it back to you in just a moment here to for some final thoughts. But before that, for all of you watching today, thanks for joining us for another program of the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley. Please remember to fill out the attendance survey and scroll down to the bottom of this page and leave us a comment, a question, any of your thoughts about this week's program. We'll ask them to maybe come back and respond to some of your questions. Also, Vim has shared some links with us related to Muzinda Hub, which will also be included in the program, so look for those just under the video. But again, thanks for joining us, and Vim, take it away for some final words.
No, I'll just be interested to see any questions that anyone would have. I'm really interested to hear of any other similar models that anyone's running anywhere else in the world that kind of look similar. You know, there's learnings that you can take from other similarly run programs. But mostly, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being with us. Everyone, we'll see you next week.